It's time for 4 downs, and we're going to discuss this betting line. Here we go.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
Okay, give us some background, Caleb, as to where this line was in the preseason, because you discussed this yesterday, where it is now, and I want to ask John Adams why it is where it is now. So what was the line in the offseason, sir?
So as a futures line, Tennessee was a double-digit favorite across the board, depending on the sportsbook you used. It went from about 10 to 14 points. Last Monday, before Texas A&M played on Saturday, Tennessee was favored by roughly 7 points. So it moved a little bit from the start of the season. Then yesterday, or after Saturday's games, the line has now moved to roughly a field goal or 4 points, depending on the sports book. So about 3.5 for Tennessee. So it's consistently moved to A&M from the start of the season to what happened last Saturday to now, from roughly 10 to 14 to now 3.5.
John, before we get into reasons why it may be where it is, what did you think coming into the week that it might be? I want to remind everybody to hit like and subscribe, have the notifications on. But does this line surprise you as is, John? And what did you think it might be before it came out on Sunday?
I thought it would be a pick'em game. The line, the preseason line, I didn't understand that either. I thought that was way high for A&M. Way high for Tennessee. I still think, to me, it's just a toss-up game. That's kind of what the odds makers are saying with a 3.5 point line. You take the home field advantage into account, and you would say this is a toss-up game.
No, well said. And Caleb, as our best betting representative on a regular basis, what does this line tell you about what Vegas is saying? Because to me, it is saying what John is, that it's a coin flip line, and it actually is leading me to believe that Vegas thinks A&M might win this game. But is that too strong? Your thoughts?
I think, I actually think it's not a pick 'em. I think they're saying that A&M is better because the line moves roughly 3 points for NFL Sunday games. But I think you need to add, my guess is they add 2 more points for like an environment like Neyland Stadium. Like if a line moves 3 points for an NFL Sunday game, shouldn't it move 5 points for Neyland Stadium in that environment or something like that? And then you add in the fact that Tennessee is coming off a bye and A&M just played a tough game. I'm sure Vegas takes that into account. So we're talking another couple points. I think exterior factors, the bye and playing at home, you're talking about the line moving 7 points to me in Tennessee's direction. So I think they think all things equal on a neutral field, Texas A&M wins this game by 3 or 4 points.
John, your thoughts on that? I think Caleb is right on the money.
Oh, I agree. If you look at Texas A&M's depth chart, look at Tennessee's depth chart, Texas A&M has a better team. There are a lot of, and Caleb's pointed out the bye week while A&M was playing at College Station against Alabama. Playing Alabama has never been conducive to a great performance the following week. I can't cite any stats on that, but teams often don't fare as well. There's sometimes a hangover effect from playing against a very good and very physical team as Alabama is right now. What's interesting to me, though, is that people don't believe in Texas A&M. The preseason line that Caleb brought up, I mean, if you looked at the talent A&M had returning, I know it had a bad year last year. It shouldn't have been that big of underdog against Tennessee, even playing in Neyland Stadium. But people don't believe in Texas A&M. That's why it wasn't ranked previously going into the Alabama game. They just think A&M won't deliver when it counts, and it has a history of that. So I think that's a part of it in looking at this line. And I think I can't think of another team where there's such a widespread lack of confidence in than there is Texas A&M. And that's come about through results on the field. It didn't just happen. A&M has proven itself to be an underachiever. But when you start breaking down position by position, Texas A&M is a better team than Tennessee. It's got a more talented roster. It's also played a tougher schedule. If Texas A&M had played Tennessee's schedule, it would be unbeaten right now.
Let me ask you this. You say better team. Are you not taking into account coaching? Because you said better roster, but better team.
No, I'm talking about, excuse me, I'm talking about just talent, players on the field. No, Jimbo as a coach is clearly in decline, and Josh Heupel is regarded as one of the best offensive coaches in college football. So Jimbo Fisher at one time was considered sort of an offensive guru. That might be overstating the case, but he had really good offenses. He's not anymore. Bobby Petrino has certainly helped, but still, this A&M team, I really thought A&M would beat Alabama. Clearly wrong about that. But the line favored Alabama, and I thought that line, too, was a testament to the lack of faith people have in A&M. Playing at home, I don't think there was great disparity in talent between Texas A&M and Alabama. Alabama's better coached.
No, I'll give you credit. I mean, the roster, if you want to talk about the roster and the actual players, A&M stacks up right there and is probably better than Tennessee. But as a team, I would take Tennessee, and I don't have a problem with them being favored. I actually might be in the minority here. I would have them as a 5 or 6 point favorite. But let's get into that with 4 Downs, brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Cooper, what do people need to do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
You can do that and turn the notifications on. What down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
All right, home field advantage for Tennessee. It's turned into one of the toughest places to play again. How big of a factor is that? Caleb, let me start with you. What is that worth? I remind you that 4 Downs brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Over 40 years of experience. He's my realtor, should be yours right there in Tennessee, buying or selling real estate. Andy Mason, realestate.com. So, Caleb, what's home field advantage, particularly at Neyland, worth? You said you hinted at 5 earlier.
Yeah, I said it's 5. I said if you're going to give 3 for the NFL, you need to give 5 for a place like Neyland or the Swamp or anywhere like that.
John,
So
I don't have a problem with that, but based off that, we're saying that Vegas thinks in the neutral site that A&M might even be favored by a half point or point.
Yeah, I agree with Caleb. It hasn't always been that way. The crowds at Neyland Stadium under Josh Heupel remind me of the crowds in Tennessee's 1998 national championship season. It has that kind of an impact on the game, and that's a tribute to what Heupel has done with the program. And we can go back and, before Heupel, I mean, there were some home games there at Neyland Stadium where I didn't think the crowd was much of a factor. Certainly not as much as you would see at Florida at times or Alabama or Auburn or LSU. But now put it up there, right up there with anybody. I think the swing, if you were playing this game at College Station, I would probably pick Texas A&M by 7 points.
Wow.
Play it at Neyland, I would pick Tennessee to win by 3, about what the line is.
And for those that don't know,
that's a big swing.
Yeah, John, for those that don't know, A&M, since it's a fairly new team in the conference, is an incredibly tough place to play. I'm sure most people know that, but just in case. All right, what down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Okay, how much of this line takes into account A&M's history of choking? John, let me begin with you.
Oh, I think it's a huge factor, whatever you want to call it, choking, underachieving, whatever. And I think that's what the line last week took into account. Again, playing in front of a home crowd of 108,000 people there at Kyle Field against an Alabama team that really hasn't been overly impressive, with questions at quarterback and on offense. You would think the crowd could be a huge factor. And it forced 8 false start penalties on Alabama. 8. And Alabama still won the game. So, yeah, that's, to me, is it's just, again, just a lack of belief. And Texas A&M.
Yep. Well, Caleb, they've proven that over the years that a lack of belief is probably the right direction to go.
Yeah, I want to say it's having an impact, but I might disagree with you guys because last week Alabama covered against Texas A&M. It was a Texas A&M minus. I mean, it was Alabama minus 2.5. I think was the line, and they ended up winning by 6. And despite that, Vegas moved the line towards Texas A&M after this weekend. So because remember, like I said last week, Tennessee was favored by 7. Now they're favored by 3. So why did they move the line towards Texas A&M after A&M couldn't cover Vegas's own expectations last weekend?
I think the people in Vegas thought A&M would probably lose by 10 points, and they were impressed that they only lost by 6, maybe.
Yeah.
So even though they set the line at 2.5,
Yeah.
they thought 10.
What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
A&M playing a backup quarterback. How big of a factor is that in this line?
Well, sure, it's always a factor, but I thought Max Johnson's probably the second best backup in the SEC going into the Alabama game. He didn't get any help. He looked like Spencer Rattler behind South Carolina's offensive line, constantly had to throw off his back foot. If you give him time, I think he can be very effective. He's got a good touch on the deep ball. He can scramble, make plays. I think he's a really good backup quarterback. I think he would start for some teams in the SEC. However, the difference in him and Connor Wegman, I don't think it's as significant as it is between most first and second team quarterbacks in the SEC. And also the fact that as a true freshman in his first college start, he won in the Swamp when Florida was number 6 in the country, and he won for LSU. I think it was like 39-36, something like that. So he's proven he can handle a hostile environment. So as backups go, he's pretty good.
Best backup in the SEC. You said he was the second best. Is it Nico or no? Who's the best backup in the SEC?
I would say Nussmeier at LSU.
Okay, fair. I would probably go Nico on that one. But so
how do you know?
Well, I don't. For people I talk to, he's incredibly ready.
Okay.
But Caleb's brought up, that may not matter if he goes out there and gets hurt on the third play. So fourth down, Coop.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Here's what I think it is ultimately is the national media isn't sold on these Vols. They're completely different and a different offensive approach. John, let me start with you and get to Caleb. I just don't think the national media is sold on these Vols quite yet. And frankly, they probably shouldn't be. South Carolina's not a great football team. I thought Josh Heupel had his worst coaching performance in Gainesville since becoming a Vol. John, you want to go first and Caleb jump in on that? It is just I don't know that there's reason for the national media to be sold on the Vols, nor for Vegas to yet.
No, not at all. I mean, you go back to preseason when Tennessee, I think, was 10th and 12th in the 2 top 25 polls. So that was that told me they were pretty sold on the Vols because Tennessee did have some significant losses, namely quarterback Hendon Hooker. But if you've watched this team play, why would you be sold on it? Hasn't beaten a team with a winning record. The loss to Florida looks worse by the weekend. Florida just got hammered by Kentucky, and then Kentucky was dismantled by Georgia. So there's no real reason to say, man, I believe in Tennessee. It's 4-1 and it's getting ready to take off. That doesn't mean it can't take off and show significant improvement, but it's got to do something on the field before you win over national media top 25 voters.
Caleb, what do you got?
Yeah, I think what Vegas is doing is they're resetting what they thought of Tennessee before the Orange Bowl, which if you guys remember, Clemson was favored in that Orange Bowl. I think Clemson was favored by like a touchdown in that Orange Bowl too. And I think Vegas, like a lot of people, overreacted to Joe Milton's performance in the bowl game. Even though if you really watch the bowl game, Milton still missed on a lot of throws in that game. I think his play was really overrated when he won Orange Bowl MVP.
Well, but if he plays like that consistently, Tennessee, I mean, if that's the high water mark, that's an okay high water mark. I mean,
I
we
don't
could
think
get
he's
this every game.
I don't think he's played that differently since that Orange Bowl. He missed a lot. We only remember the times he hit, and Clemson's defense didn't get off the bus in that game. And
Yeah,
so
I think he's missed a lot of passes underneath that he would have missed in that game. But I mean, if that's the high water mark, Tennessee is competing for a college football playoff spot. If I guess it depends on your expectations going in. John, if he plays that well, I think Tennessee's good. I just don't have expectations that he's going to play considerably better than that.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm one of those people that put a lot of stock in that Orange Bowl performance because it was against a top 10 team, and it was with a lot of pressure on him. Wasn't in a hostile environment, but it was on a neutral site. So there's a lot of pressure on him to perform well, and he did that. I mean, he was the MVP offensive MVP for a reason. He wasn't perfect, certainly, but he didn't make any turnovers. Compare that to the Joe Milton we saw against Florida or even against Austin Peay. And if he had played at that Clemson level, Tennessee, I think, would be 5-0 right now and maybe a 7-point favorite over the Aggies.